Children's Parliament says they have a right to be part of the discussions around gender-based violence. Now, children were meant to voice their concerns at the presidential summit, but they were removed from the programme. Let's speak to Steve Miller of Save the Children SA about this and other issues. Steve Miller, thank you so much for your time. What is your understanding of why these children didn't get to speak? We heard it was simply a time crunch.
Yeah, it's been an interesting 2 days, and I think all the delegates are fairly exhausted. An important couple of days, so that's good to note as well. But certainly nothing ran to time, and yes, the children weren't able to speak yesterday. They were just given an opportunity a couple of hours ago in the final plenary to talk about their issues and what they would like to see happen, and we can chat about that too.
Yeah, I mean, talk to me about when a child has gone through abuse of any form, their innocence is robbed from them. They almost have to be treated with the respect that you would give a grown-up and that sort of understanding that they've seen things they shouldn't at their young age. Do you think that it's important for children's voices to be heard? Do they have a markedly different viewpoint to anyone else, an adult who's been abused, for example?
Yes, certainly. The first thing to state really, and it did actually come out in this summit, are these intersections between violence against children and violence against women. The two are intimately connected and work off each other as well. So, for children not to be given this space within the NSP, not to be consulted in its design and drafting, and not now to be involved at a very high level is really problematic. I work for an organization called Save the Children, and we have extensive networks of child activists across the country. And I can tell you that the children that we work with are incredibly articulate, incredibly passionate. They know exactly what they want. They're affected by this violence directly, and they have a lot to say. And so we just need to give them that space, that genuine space, and move beyond tokenism that we see at a lot of these summits. Give them an opportunity to engage. I promise you'll see a change in the game.
What's the biggest thing you've learned, Steve, from listening to children victims? What was the thing that surprised you or made you think, wow, I'd never thought of it in that way? Yeah,
look, firstly, it's not good for people like me to be speaking to you, and in future we'll try to get our child rights activists to speak on their own.
Sure.
But very often what you find, we have a fantastic way of gathering evidence. We have world-class researchers into violence in South Africa. We've got practitioners like ourselves who work in the space. We've got the government. But very often we miss the very basic things that affect children. And very often we tend to come in with ideas and what works, only to find that they don't work. But now that we have a program and we have funding and we have objectives to meet, we push ahead with these programs. And so what we're trying to do now at Save the Children, at least, and a lot of other organizations like us as well, is to have real child participation. So influencing the strategy and the direction of our organizations, getting involved in the design of our programs before these programs even start. And then we sort of understand exactly where the issues are, and then being part of those programs and helping us to evaluate them. So certainly there's a powerful voice that comes, and I think you really can't, there's a saying that you keep hearing from the children, nothing about us without us, and it's entirely correct. How can you possibly come in and have programs and have solutions without speaking to the people that are actually affected by this violence?
Yeah, and children, I would imagine, are traumatized. When you say it's often mothers and children who are abused at the same time, and there's an intersectionality there. And I would imagine it's not only the abuse you yourself as a child go through, but it is watching your parent being abused, and that is its own form of trauma. You said something interesting just a little earlier. You said that this was an important summit. It's been criticised as just another talk shop. A couple of activists on the ground saying, rather just give the money to us. We can run our shelters with the money that you spent. Do you think the summit was important to hold?
Look, the timing was confusing, and you can read into that what you want. But I think it's always important. I understand that these summits don't always lead somewhere. I'm also involved in global partnerships, like the Global Partnership to End Violence Against Children. And very often you get frustrated with these level of gatherings because you feel it's a talk shop and nothing comes out of it. But I think there's an importance of bringing people together, if at the very least to hold government, in this case, to account. There was a really good accountability session this morning, and I think the organizers did try their best to really be inclusive. In fact, some were arguing too inclusive because the sessions all ran over time. But people had a chance to directly bring their questions and their concerns to ministers and to the president yesterday as well. So I think for what it's worth, that's important. It also keeps our eye on the ball. It gives us the opportunity. You and I are having this conversation right now about how children's issues need to be better integrated into the NSP. And we were talking about a seventh pillar. There's 6 pillars in the NSP. The 7th pillar focused on children, and that resolution is being fleshed out as we speak. So there is something that comes from it. But of course, yes, the critics are right. You can take all that money and you can plow it into programs, and you'll probably do a lot more good.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I want to get your comment on something that National Treasury said today at the summit, that lack of money is not necessarily a problem. He said there is money. He quoted an amount of 12 billion rand. It's not clear how organised he was and how prepared he was for this summit. There has been some criticism. But he's saying the bigger problem is that there aren't proper rollout plans. It's not properly organised to reach the right people to be used. Do you think he's right, that money is the lesser of the problems, or a lack of money? It's more about how the money is rolled out.
Yeah, he's got a vague point, but I don't think there's enough funding available in the space at all. I also heard that figure. I heard the 13 billion rand figure, which apparently was very difficult to unpack. And if you look at it really closely, how much of that is actually new money since the NSP came into effect in 2019, and how much is sort of repurposed for this exact case. All I know from the practitioner level, from those working in shelters, in child and youth care centres, on parenting programs, who work closely with the government, this is always an issue, is money. And when we watch the midterm budget statement, when we watch the Treasury and how they prioritise, we don't see children in that, in our instance. When I listen to the SONA, all I hear is one reference to children, and it's about how they find it difficult to cross rivers sometimes. It's absolutely crazy. So no, there's not enough money that's coming into this space, and there's not enough understanding that really, I don't want to, make a cliche or anything, but the children really are our future here in South Africa. And we know that there's this intergenerational cycle of violence, and if we're not working on it now, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line, it's only going to get worse. So no, there's not enough money, no matter what the Treasury says, and it's not about rollouts and so on. It's about getting the money to the people who actually need it.
Yeah, and the people, right, it's so true, and often the people on the ground doing what seems like small work, small little projects, but face-to-face things that really start to change attitudes and reverse patterns of abuse. Thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. It is much appreciated. Steve Miller of Save the Children SA.